It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. This live stream is brought to you by Heatcraft Refrigeration. Find out more about them at heatcraftrpd.com. Yo, what is up, my friends? Hello to everybody out there. Welcome to the HVACR videos live stream, whether or not you're listening to this in podcast format or watching the actual live stream. Welcome to the show. As usual, I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about, but first and foremost, I got to say hey to everybody in the chat and everybody that's watching right now. In the chat right now, I say this every time, but I don't care what platform you guys watch on. It doesn't benefit me either way, okay? But if you watch it on YouTube, there is a huge community. There's a large group of people, a lot of regulars that are in the chat, and it's really awesome. There's a whole group, and I come on here and I answer questions and I try to answer people's questions in the chat. Well, there's people in the chat answering people's questions too. So there's a whole conversation going on. And that's what's really cool about these live streams is the community, right? It's not just the host, right? The host is just me, right? But the community of people that come together is really awesome. So welcome to the stream and hello to all the regulars and everybody that's in there. Adrian from Reliable HVACR. I've got Jason Johnson, Will Speed, Steve from Everything HVACR, Brian Sanders. There's so many different people, right, man? Thank you very much, Brian. You don't have to do those super chats, but it is very much appreciated. Thank you so very much, my good friend. Again, there's a lot of other people that I'm not mentioning too. Thank you to everybody. It's really awesome to have the support, right? I encourage, and from the beginning, I have encouraged everybody out there to share your knowledge. And I think that's something that's really great about the whole social media community in general, for the most part, with all the different creators. We all know each other and we all communicate. It's not really a competition thing. At least I don't see it that way. It is what it is, and everybody's out there just sharing their knowledge. Some people may not like to listen to me. They may want to listen to Adrian. They may want to listen to Steve. They may want to listen to, whoever else. And so be it. That's great. As long as the information gets out there. That's the most important thing. And I encourage everybody to share your knowledge. I shared a story on the live stream last week about a little kid that I, inspired, or whatever you want to say. And we all have that ability. We really do. We all have the ability to inspire other people, whether it be to get into the trade, whether it be to just be good people. Just share whatever knowledge you have with others, and, in hopes that you can better someone else's life too. So I think that's really important. And that's what I find happiness right now is just sharing knowledge, right? So I do have to acknowledge, and I don't think I acknowledge it enough. Heatcraft Refrigeration, they've been a great partner of mine, and they're sponsoring this live stream. And, it's really cool. Again, I'm still waiting for some footage to be delivered to me from my visit to Georgia. I went back, if you guys don't already know, I flew out to Georgia and filmed a bunch of footage with the Heatcraft Refrigeration team, multiple different factories. My gosh, we went to so many different factories, different facilities. I got to see all kinds of cool stuff. And, one thing that I really took away from that, and I'm truly being genuine, is that they have a small town feel as far as a company. They have family members that work at the company that have worked there for years and years and years. They have generational employees, basically. So it's something that's really neat, and it's really cool to see that from an American-based company that, still likes to hire local. And, it's just really neat. So definitely check out Heatcraft. Go to heatcraftrpd.com. Lots of great information. I do want to kind of talk about something too, better yourself with knowledge, whether it be whatever manufacturer out there. Take as many training classes as you can. I encourage every one of you to do that. Remember that, your knowledge is yours to keep forever. So it doesn't matter if a company sends you to go get trained, that knowledge is yours to keep forever. So remember that. Take as much training as you can. In your off time, on your vacation time, as long as it doesn't interfere with family stuff, when you have, spare time at home, research, read, find information. I just recently went through a couple different classes when I was at Heatcraft. I have no interest in working on hot gas defrost. I don't work on hot gas defrost, but it was an interesting class to take, right? So I took the Mojave 101 class. And then I have previously taken the Intelligent class because I work on a lot of the Intelligent controllers. I am an old school service technician, and I love holding a manual in my hand. So when I can get my hands on these manuals, amazing. Love doing it. Lots of great information. So, I just encourage everybody out there, continue your education, right? Back when Nate was really, really popular, it's a training organization, right? Back when that was really popular, I didn't so much believe in the idea or in the concept of NATE because you have to pay to maintain your education. But what I do like about industry certifications such as NATE or an ESCO certification or, an RSES certification or any of those, right? What I do like about those is that in order to maintain the certification, you have to continue your education. So in no way does a certification make you better than the next guy, right? Because, there could be a guy that's never taken those certification trainings and he's just as knowledgeable, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're better than someone else because you have a certification, but the fact that you took the time to educate yourself, and if you maintain your certification, then that means that you're taking the time to continually educate yourself and continue your education. That's what's most important, because this industry is ever changing every day. Every week there's a new flavor of refrigerant coming out. Oh my gosh, everybody's freaking out. Like, you know what? And it's just going to keep coming and coming and coming. So, just educate yourself, better yourself. Let's see what the chat has going on right now. Jumping through here right now. Right on. That's funny. That is funny. Jason Johnson's got a lot of things going on. What's up, Scott? My buddy HVAC rookie. I got the chance to hang out with Scott. We had a local trade show going on, the iHacky trade show in Southern California. And Scott is a couple hours away from me. So he drove down and we hung out for the day, just kind of walking around the show, catching up, had lunch together. Scott was very gracious and he bought me lunch. So that was really nice of you, Scott. So thank you very much. What is up, man? All right. Reading through the chat right now. What am I missing? Ice machine training is so important. Yeah, any kind of training. And it is ice machine training season right now. Most manufacturers aren't doing big, heavy trainings in the summertime because that's usually the busy time. So they try to get you in the fall and they try to get you in the spring, right? The winter time, some of them are doing them, but for the most part in the Midwest, up north, in the colder climates, the winter is just as busy as summertime. So, it just depends. But this right now is training time as we're heading into winter. So it is very important to sign up for those ice machine training classes. One thing I will say is that manufacturers across the board, they don't do the greatest job, and as they probably don't have a obligation to do so, but they don't do a good job telling you, hey, it's time for training, right? If you get up their email list, you can get it. But ice machine training classes, oftentimes you have to go to your ice machine distributors and you have to say, when is the training class, and get signed up. My local training classes are typically January, February. So I will definitely get on the list here soon and get signed up. For those that don't already know, I plan on being in attendance at the HVACR training symposium that Brian Orr from HVAC School is putting on. It will be in Claremont, Florida at the Kalos facility. That will be, I think that is at the end of January, I think. And then also at the beginning of February, I will be at the AHR trade show in Chicago. It's pretty safe to say you can catch me at the Sporlan booth at the AHR trade show. You can catch me at the Heatcraft Refrigeration booth or the Refrigeration Technologies booth. Between those three, you'll probably be able to catch me while the show's going on. So if you make it out to Chicago, definitely come look me up at the AHR trade show. And what is up? Scott, you didn't need to do that, but thank you very much, man. I really do appreciate it. Jason Johnson. So Jason Johnson says that he had to work on a Voyager 3 today. That is a train package unit. And he says the diagram was gone. So, it's interesting. My buddy Bill Russell today was doing an install and startup on a few new train package units with the new Symbios controls. And the schematic was loose in a little plastic thing on the door. So you pulled out multiple pieces of paper that were just floating in the wind. They were not glued to the door whatsoever. Something that Bill brought up, and I'm sure he'll talk about it more, but that seems kind of silly, right? Because one guy out in the middle of the snow pulls that schematic out when it's windy and whew, see you go, that's one thing I don't think, I don't know. Who knows? I don't want to get into a bashing fest, but let's see what else we got going on in the chat right now. Yeah, lots of great people. Michael C. and Franco's in here. What's up, my friend? How's it going, man? Lots of great people. This is really awesome. So thank you so very much. Right. So I want to talk about something that I just have to get off my chest. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time. Let's see. Supertext said, did that hot gas defrost class focus on single systems or rack systems? The class that I went to was specifically on their Mojave system. So it was a single system, kind of. I mean, for the most part, but they have more advanced ones. This was an introduction, and then they have multiple levels explaining hot gas defrost and how the different systems work. And that was at Heatcraft Refrigeration. So if you're interested in any of those training classes, heatcraftrpd.com. The A2L refrigerants, there is so much misinformation and hype about the A2L refrigerants. Everybody is freaking out way too much. Okay. First and foremost, let me clarify right now. Spread the word, share with everybody. A2L refrigerants do not contain propane. They do not contain butane. Okay. They don't. There is no propane in the A2L refrigerants. Okay. A3 refrigerants have propane and butane. Those are pure propane and pure butane. Okay. A2L is a classification right in between. It's mildly flammable because one of the refrigerants or two of the refrigerants in there do have flammable components to them. So they're called mildly flammable. The next thing to clear up, A2L refrigerants will not be popping up in existing air conditioning systems. You will not be converting existing air conditioning systems over to A2L refrigerants. That is not part of the picture. A2L refrigerants will only be used in new system startups, equipment that was designed to work with those A2L refrigerants. Okay. And, while I don't necessarily love the fact that they're changing the flavor of refrigerant every single day, I mean, what control do I have over the matter? I wouldn't be so concerned about the A2L refrigerants. If you are a competent service technician that follows proper refrigeration practices, you will be just fine. Okay. If you're like myself or some of the other kitchen appliance guys that happen to deal with A3 refrigerants, hydrocarbon refrigerants, it'll be a walk in the park working on A2L systems. The biggest thing is that you need to sweep the systems before you braze on them, before you take components out. It's always good to sweep the system with nitrogen to try to clear out as much of the potential combustible refrigerants out of the system. But again, with the A2L refrigerants, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Okay. You're not going to have systems blowing up and different things unless you have dum-dums that don't service the equipment right. I think the biggest issues with all these different A3 refrigerants and A2L refrigerants is going to be people that do improper repairs. Like, for instance, okay, I don't know this to be fact, but what I will say, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, there was a thing that went around the internet about a domestic residential refrigerator that blew up in a lady's house. It literally blew up. Her whole kitchen was in shambles and the refrigerator had blown up. And the rumor through the industry was that was a isobutane system, right? R600 was in there. And that's why it blew up, because it had flammable refrigerants. But what a lot of people failed to recognize, if you read that story thoroughly, what you would have read is that there was a service technician out there the day before, and he worked on it and he had to order a part. Okay. He left the system running. What part he had to order, I don't know. Okay. And we don't know all the details. We don't know, at least I don't. Maybe someone else out there does. I don't know exactly the final outcome of what happened there. Bottom line, there was a service technician there before. Supposedly, what the article had said, is that he bypassed something to get it operational. And then there was an explosion after he had left. Okay. So we can kind of guess maybe he bypassed something strange. Who knows what happened? Okay. When it comes to A3 refrigerants, when it comes to hydrocarbon refrigerants, one really easy thing to say is that if you have a failed component, if you have a refrigerant leak, you shut the equipment down, period. You shut it down until you can get the replacement parts. Okay. That's like a basic common sense practice that you should be taking. Okay. When it comes to A2L refrigerants, right? It's just a mildly flammable refrigerant. Basically, as it stands, if you try to light the refrigerant coming straight out of the bottle, it's not going to catch on fire. Okay. It's only going to catch on fire under certain circumstances. It really is just basic common sense. So don't be afraid and don't believe the internet hype, and do not believe whatever idiot at the supply house counter told you that it's got propane in it, because it doesn't. A2L refrigerants do not have propane. Okay. They do not have butane, right? Don't listen to them. They're wrong. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. I'm reading through the chat. Haven't had a chance to they're talking about the Symbio system. IntelliPacks are his favorite. Oh, that's what Jason's saying. Yeah, right on, man. Let's see what else we got going on here. Portable charger for a phone blew up on an airplane today. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, man. If you buy those crappy chargers, that tends to happen with the lithium ion batteries. That's why they want you only taking portable chargers and battery packs and things in your carry-on luggage. That way it can be accessed and it's not down in the cargo hold of the airplane when there's potentially going to be a problem, right? Because if it's up in the cabin, then at least you can deal with it for, in whatever way you can somehow grab it, contain it, put it in a place where, I'm sure they have some sort of fireproof containers or something based on the way that they operate these planes these days. So, fire is cool, says Beavis and Butthead. Yes, I did grow up on Beavis and Butthead myself today, too. Let's see. Jacob Crabtree says tanks will have left-handed threads. Adapters will be required to use. FYI, they are taking all precautions to make the switch safe and seamless. Just use common sense. And Jason, I find the tanks having backwards threads kind of silly, too. That's just annoying. Do you remember when they first came out with mini splits that had 410A in them, and you had to have a silly adapter to be able to make the mini split work with normal refrigerant hoses? Do you remember, if you guys have been in the industry long enough, do you remember all the crazy hype? Everybody thought when they changed over to 410 in the mid to late 90s, the rumors going through the supply houses were that everything's going to blow up. Oh, you're going to need different gauges for everything. Do you remember that? Everybody's saying you need a separate set of gauges to work on 410A, to work on R22, to work on all these different. That's a bunch of baloney. Okay. It was a bunch of overhype, people overreacting to things. It's not going to be that big of a deal. as long as you follow some basic safety practices, okay? I really don't like the idea of the left-handed threads on the tanks. I think that's dumb. That's just dumb. It really is, okay? I mean, common sense, people, like we don't have left-handed threads on R290. It's just a basic normal adapter for your system, It's just, I don't know. I guess we do need this training with all these people that refuse to accept the fact that there's no propane in these refrigerants. Even if you can read all the technical documents, they believe anything that anybody tells them. Like, I don't know. Maybe we need all this training. I just don't really understand it very much. Let's see. Why don't I expand my services to other places, other restaurants? Right now, I don't have enough staff to expand, and it's difficult to get any bigger than I am. I would love to, but I need to become a better business owner and have better capabilities of delegating and, not having to deal with so many different things. So if I could find better staff, not better staff, if I could find more people that could potentially work for me and I could slowly build my business up, I'd love to, but I have no interest in growing like 10x or any of that crap. I just want to just have a nice, comfortable business that I don't have to stress too much about. And right now, I have way too much stress in my life as it is with my business. I don't need any more. So, do I run my home unit on just fan for filtration? How much? Dale, I'm still kind of working through my home unit and figuring out the best practices for everything right now. As it stands for the last week, I've had my system running on low fan speed all the time, continuous, just to kind of circulate some air throughout the house. As we update and finish some things up, and I'll talk about my home unit a little bit more as I get further down the line. So I do have to say I apologize for the clickbait in the last video, but I just had to. That was just too perfect to be working at the very first place I ever filmed a YouTube video at, and then just be able to throw that silly comment in there. I couldn't help myself. Sorry about that, but not really. So this last weekend, if you don't already know, I have been over the course of the last year, I have been installing a new air conditioning system in my house, and I'm a very slow mover when it comes to that because my business and YouTube and everything came priority. So I've been doing it a little bit at a time, but I got my equipment installed about a month ago and it's been operational, but I've been slowly tying up some loose ends. So this last weekend, I was able to fix a problem with my system. I was able to measure my airflow and air balance my entire system. That was kind of a chore, and I have some frustrations to say about Carrier with the Infinity system. Preston, thank you very much for that super sticker, I think is what that is. Thank you very much. It says, I am in school, or that's a super chat. It says, I am in school for my second month in your 10-month program. What would be the best thing to do to get ahead in school and to increase your chances of getting an apprenticeship job? Great question there, bud. So Preston, what I would highly suggest you do is just continue to focus on your studies, bust your butt, research, study, and watch lots of YouTube videos. Okay. That's going to be your best bet. Just really, really dig your head in there and try as best as possible to ask as many questions as possible. Okay. When I go to a training class, I sit in the very front of the class if I can help it. And my goal in a training class is like genuinely to ask every single question that pops up into my mind. And I'll be honest with you, majority of the time, the person that's teaching the training classes, I can tell they usually get sick of the questions that I ask because I ask questions all the time. I also ask questions as I'm sitting in the class and I feel like someone behind me asks a question and it doesn't quite get answered the way that they think, because a lot of people tend to be a little hesitant to continue to ask questions if they don't understand it. So I'll ask follow-up questions to get the instructor to clarify other people's questions too. So ask as many questions as you can. Understand that your instructor's not going to know everything. Okay. They aren't. It's just not possible. So just do your best and do as much research as possible. And I promise you will be, ahead of your game as long as you just stay on top of your studies and research as much as possible. Okay. Let me see. Reading through the chat, see what I'm missing in here. I'm seeing, I already answered that question. All right, cool. Stay off your phone, Freon Leon says. That's a really important thing when you're in school. Yeah, if you can, stay off your phone. Don't disrupt the class. Pay attention to what's going on for sure. Ask all the questions you can, 100%. So what's the story behind all the compressors in the background? Those are all just compressors that have been on my channel that I have cut up and whatever. I start to have fun. I've cut up so many compressors over the last couple of years that I consider myself pretty decent at cutting them up just using an angle grinder. I am jealous. If you follow, I think it's Roman Baugh, I think, who is one of the new commercial service managers for Kalos. He works for Brian Orr at HVAC School. He posted on social media that HVAC School or Kalos is buying an actual compressor cutter. So basically the compressor is going to mount on a jig and rotate so they can get perfect cuts on that. And I am so envious of that, because if I could get a perfect cut on a compressor, that would be amazing. But yeah, all those compressors are just basically slowly destroying the shelving behind me because they're so heavy, but I just enjoy cutting them up to try to figure out what killed them. That's just something that I do. So, yeah, I air balanced my system this last weekend, and I got to say, I have some frustrations. I already had a problem with I installed a new Carrier Infinity at my house, and I already have a problem with it. I was getting ready to air balance it, and there's 2 different apps that you can use to access your Carrier Infinity system. You have a consumer facing app that the homeowner can basically adjust the temperatures, that kind of stuff, right? I have access to the consumer based app, but for whatever reason, I could not log in on the service technician app. Now, I didn't know what cool features the service technician app had, but I couldn't log in. I could see the equipment, and I was able to get that fixed. You're going to have to stay tuned for the video to figure out what I had to do to get that fixed, but it will be coming out hopefully in my next video. But I was able to get in there, but then I get into the service technician app and it doesn't do anything cool. It's stupid. All it does is give you a window just with some more advanced numbers. I can see everything from the thermostat that I can see in the service technician app. That was just it wasn't a waste. It was just silly though, right? But couple things. I will share a few details with you guys. My total external static pressure. So we designed my system and we went nuts with it, right? We went crazy sizing the ductwork, sizing the registers. So I want you guys to guess in the chat what you think my final total external static pressure was after I air balanced my system. Okay. I have a 2-ton system. We redesigned the entire duct system. We cut in all new register boots. We carefully sized everything. We put in a 4-inch media filter. We did our best. So what do you guys think in the chat my total external static was on high when my system is running at max capacity? Well, I don't know about some of those. Some of those are pretty low, but yeah, some of them are pretty close too. My total external static, it was not 1 inch, Jennifer. I can promise you that. Ryan, it was not 3/4 of an inch. It was 0.33 inches of water column was my total external static after all was said and done. Okay. And that is with a fully balanced system. I air balanced it within 1% of design on every single register. Okay. Something that I learned because I've never really done residential air balancing or really commercial air balancing besides just winging it and feeling building pressures. Right. So when I was air balancing every single diffuser, I had to learn through this process. Luckily, I have some really good friends in high places that can help me with that, but I had to learn, right? And when you see a design report that says when you see a design report, and you see your required airflow, and number one of my biggest gripes with the Carrier Infinity system is you cannot dial in airflow. You can't dial it in. You only have 3 adjustments on the Carrier Infinity system, 3 airflow settings, and you have to just pick between the 3. And that's just what you get. The next thing is the Carrier Infinity wall control that's on the wall. Maybe there's something wrong with it, but it does not read the accurate CFMs. It says 850 CFMs on the Carrier wall control. It's not reading the accurate airflow, right? Because my airflow is right at 1,000 CFMs. So it's not accurate. The total external static pressure is close because on the Carrier Infinity system, I think it said 0.38, I think is what it said my total external static was, but it was actually 0.33 using the Energy Conservatory's DG8. So I know that's 100% accurate. But I was able to get the airflow balanced within 1% at every diffuser. In fact, it's basically like a couple CFMs over when you actually look at the CFM. But I had to learn not to look at the CFM because if you're trying to chase the exact design CFM out of every register, you're never going to meet that because airflow is just too weird. So you got to look at percentages. And that's how I learned, because it was just too difficult trying to chase it per CFM. So you look at percentages, and I got plus 1% on like 4 of them, and everything else is dead on as far as perfect for 100% designed airflow. Let me see what else we got going on in here. What else do we got in there? Oh yeah, I've got lots of surge protectors on my system. I put one in on my fan coil and on my condenser outside. Did I install a MERV filter in the home unit? What's the MERV number? I installed a MERV 13 4-inch media filter is what I installed. So let's see. Yeah, you were off. Yeah, exactly. Reading through here. Oh yeah, and the other thing too, all the flex duct haters, my system works perfectly. Like, honestly, I didn't even need to air balance it. Really, I didn't, because it was so close on everything, but I went ahead and did it. And I've got perfect airflow, 0.33 inches of total external static, plus 1% on like 4 of the registers, and everything else is 100%. And that's all with flex duct. But it all just depends on how you install your systems. And I used a plenum system, and it's a single run plenum system, basically, home run from the plenum going to each thing. So you might call it a ductopus system or whatever you want to call it, but it works perfect, right? It's just a matter of stretching out the flex duct, trying to get airflow as best as possible. See what else we got going on in the chat. What else we got? What am I missing in here? Reading through the chat. Breaks into zip ties. Oh yeah, exactly. DG8 is 0.9% accurate. There you go. So reading through the chat, seeing what I'm missing. Okay, cool. So that was fun doing that. I'm sure my wife is just about completely done with me doing this home system. So what's left on my system now that I've air balanced it, I've still got to air seal a few more things. My return cabinet, I encased it and enclosed it all with plywood, but I did not air seal it yet. So I got to caulk all the seams and get it all sealed. I put new returns on my system because I had custom made bar style returns that were special orders. So we had received those. So I installed those. This will all come out in the next video. So as far as my existing system, I still have to tidy up the condensate drain, put an overflow switch on it. I still have to bring in fresh air, which will be a whole nother project, trying to figure out what kind of fresh air I want to do. And then I still need to install jumper ducts. So I have a return path from every bedroom, because my master bedroom is getting overpressurized. Now, before it was overpressurized by like 20 pascals, meaning that there's too much air coming in. If you shut the door, there wasn't enough return path. So the room's pressures would build up and it would slow down the incoming air coming out of the registers. So we still need to finish that up, put the jumper ducts in, and find the return path for every room, which will all be coming soon too. When I am working on equipment, let's say I'm working on a package unit and I need some parts for it, right? Of course, I try to use OEM parts as much as possible. And this is something that someone had asked me, where do I find my part numbers? How do I find out if I have the right part numbers? How do I find out if the supply house has given you the right part numbers? Okay. First and foremost, the best advice I can give every single one of you is always question people when they give you information. Always question them, right? Be informed yourself before you call for part numbers. Don't just blindly trust someone that you gave a model and serial number to. For example, I do a lot of refrigeration parts, right? Because I work on restaurant refrigerators. I order a lot of parts through Partstown. Okay. Partstown is just a giant conglomerate that owns service companies, sells parts, all this different stuff, right? But Partstown has all kinds of equipment manuals, and you can go in there and look up model numbers and serial numbers, and it'll tell you what part you need. But Partstown is constantly wrong. And here's why. Manufacturers oftentimes use the same model number for 4 different designs of a same model number. It may have 2 drawers. It may have 1 door. It may have 1 door, 3 drawers. It may have all different configurations for a specific model number. Same thing goes with a lot of the air conditioning manufacturers too. So you as a technician cannot just blindly trust someone to say that this is the right part number. Okay. You need to be educated yourself when you're calling for those part numbers. Measure things. When I am looking for parts, I will typically download the manuals or use the actual manufacturer's apps. A lot of manufacturers, all the major air conditioning manufacturers, or a good majority of them, they have their own apps that you can download. If you're working on train equipment, You can get the Train app. I think is it no, it's not Comfort Side. Is it Train 360? Or did they change the name again? I can't remember what Train's app is. But anyways, I have it on my phone. You download Train's app, you get a login through your distributor, and you can look up part numbers. You can look up tech manuals. Same thing with Carrier, Linux. You can find it all, okay? A lot of ice machine manufacturers have different apps. Heatcraft Refrigeration has an app. You can go to download the hub from Heatcraft Refrigeration on any of the app stores, and you can find all kinds of information. So do your due diligence and research your own stuff. Ask questions. When someone gives you a part number, ask them, how did you find that? How did you get that part number without the serial number? Oh, because it's the same. No, it's not. You need to question that stuff. That way you're not given the wrong information. Blindly trusting the supply house is asking for a world of hurt, for sure. So I'm reading through here. What am I missing? Did I stretch out my flex before I installed it? Yes, I did. I stretched it out, pulled the memory out of it, let it sit for a few minutes, then took it up into the attic and installed it. So yes, I went out into my front yard. I grabbed the flex. I had my wife hold one end of the 25-foot run. I went and held the other end. We pulled it tight, grabbing the metal ring, and we stretched it out for about 2 minutes, just held it, and then we let it go. And then I carefully took it up into the attic out of the box and then ran it, stretched it, ran it as tight as possible. It's not perfect. I mean, I'm sure, people will criticize me, but, I tried my best. That's all. Reading through here. You need to close your bedroom door. No, actually, we don't close my bedroom door, to be honest with you, very often. So anyways, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing. All right. What's cool? Okay. So when I recently posted a video where I was working on a Linux package unit and I installed a 30 cubic inch filter dryer. Why? And I got this question from a bunch of different people. Why did I install ball valves? And and then other people are asking, since I installed ball valves, how come I didn't install a flare dryer? So the reason why I installed ball valves was to make it easier for the next service technician that has to change a filter dryer. This particular system was a grounded compressor, okay? And the customer had been resetting the breaker, so it was a nasty burn. The oil was just pure sludge, okay? So why in the heck did I install ball valves? Because I predict that we're probably going to have to go back and change that filter dryer. But I also massively oversized the filter dryer because what was originally in there was an 8 cubic inch and I changed it to a 30 cubic inch. Now I had to compensate the refrigerant charge because of the added internal volume of the dryer. But why didn't I use a flare dryer if I thought I was going to be coming back? Okay. I installed that dryer in a location that was very far away from my shop. Okay. I prefer not to do flare dryers when I'm way out in the boonies if I can, because there's always the potential that there's going to be a problem. The next thing, on air conditioners themselves, I actually prefer not to use flare dryers because oftentimes air conditioners tend to have more vibration issues. And if you have a mechanical connection, you have more of a potential, such as a flare, of vibration issues causing problems, especially for customers that don't do good routine maintenance. In a perfect world, yeah, it would have been smart to install flare, right? It would have been smart, but it's just like, it's not really that big of a deal. So, oh, great question. I actually get this one quite often, and people are always curious. Does unsweating a filter dryer in a system then release that moisture into the system? So best practices tells you that in a perfect world, you should recover all the refrigerant from the system, and then you should try to cut the dryer out. So that way, potentially, as you're heating up the brazed fittings, you don't potentially heat up that dryer to the point that the desiccant inside that dryer starts to release the moisture, and then that moisture flows back into the system, okay? So should you always cut out a dryer? I mean, I guess in a perfect world, but who in their right mind is going to cut out a filter dryer every single time? When you cut out a filter dryer working on a package unit, what you're doing, you oftentimes don't have a lot of room to work with. So if you cut out the dryer, it's usually 3/4 of an inch above the braze connection. So then you have to add extension pieces. It's not very practical in what I'm doing. So am I concerned about releasing moisture into the system if I unbraze or unsweat a dryer? I'm not really worried about it at all. For the most part, I try to braze with nitrogen whenever possible. Okay. But then on top of that, I'm evacuating the system. to crazy amounts. And I think that if there is potential of any moisture being released into that system, it's so negligible. It's so minute that, I mean, in my opinion, maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that big of a deal. Okay. You're brazing with nitrogen. It's flowing through the system. Unsweat the dryer and move on. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in here. What am I missing? Okay, cool. Reading through here. Moisture is usually at the metering device. Well, Mario, the reason why people will say moisture is at the metering device, moisture will typically, if it gets past the filter dryers, the coldest spot in the system is at the metering device. So if you have moisture and you didn't do a good job evacuating the system, that moisture is potentially going to freeze at the point at which the metering device flashes that refrigerant into a vapor liquid mixture after it, goes through the expansion valve. So that's typically the point at which you're going to have the most potential of freezing any moisture that's in the system. If you do a good evacuation, okay, you're going to be fine. You're not going to have to worry about the moisture. Just make sure you're following proper refrigeration practices. When I released a video over last Thursday where I was working on a glycol unit, and I had to change a pump on that glycol unit. Why in the heck did I not use a pump saver coupling on that pump? So on the glycol units, we have a carbonator pump and a carbonator pump motor. Okay. I call it a glycol pump assembly. I change them all together. But you can put a pump saver coupling in between the motor and the pump. And the theory is that if there's ever a problem, the pump saver is going to break before it ruins the motor or before it ruins the pump. Honestly, I don't find them useful, and I don't really see that pump saver couplings really in the kind of equipment that I'm working on save you anything. I mean, what usually kills your pump motors is the customers not maintaining their glycol, the glycol getting thick and dirty, and then gumming up the pump and then causing the pump to be hard to turn. So then it burns out the motor. Okay. That's usually what causes these things. And I realize if you put a pump saver coupling there, that in theory, you would only have to change the pump and the coupling, but I just changed the pump and the motor together. So I really don't see the point in pump saver couplings. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not saying that you're wrong if you use a pump saver coupling. It's just not practical for what I'm doing. My office is looking chaotic. Yeah, my office is a dumpster fire right now. Absolutely. So something that I want to talk about is as the weather starts changing, it starts getting colder outside right now. For the refrigeration guys and the built-up air conditioning guys, you really need to start paying attention to the refrigerant charge. You're probably already getting the my walk-in coolers not working first thing in the morning, but by noon it starts working fine calls. And typically, in my experience in my area, we see those in the fall, and those are typically refrigerant-related issues. Okay. Oftentimes on refrigeration systems, we will have something called a flooded charge. Okay. The flooded charge is extra refrigerant that the system needs to operate properly in the wintertime when it has a head pressure control valve. The head pressure control valve bypasses and it needs extra refrigerant. If you guys want to find out more about head pressure control valves, I highly suggest you go to Sporlin's website, Sporlin.com, I think is what it is. Sporlin.com. Yeah, Sporlin.com. And download the 90-30 series of tech docs. Again, I love holding these things. So this one right here is 90-30. This one gives you a basic understanding of head pressure control valves. This one right here is 90-31. Okay. This one goes into a little bit more detail about the head pressure control valves. And then this one, I do think that they need to change the numbering on these. This one is 90-30-1. This one right here is one of the best documents that they have, because this one right here breaks down sizing and figuring out how much extra refrigerant you need for flooded charges. Okay. Highly suggest you guys look into those. Very good documents to have on your trucks, understanding how head pressure control valves work. The other thing I encourage all you guys to do is cut things open. This is a typical LAC head pressure control valve. I put it in the bandsaw, cut it open. So that way I could understand the operation. There's really nothing to them. Everybody thinks these things are the devil. They're not. What usually in my experience kills these things is contaminants. Okay. Contaminants floating through the system is typically what kills them. There's a couple different types, but one thing I want to point out. Have you guys ever seen an LAC valve that has this funky power head on it? Okay. As compared to this LAC valve that just has a dome style. Does anybody in the chat know what the difference between these two valves are? Okay. It's not, what's the difference between these two valves? They're both LAC valves, but one of them has this weird, funky looking power head, and one of them has this just standard style. So I'm curious in the chat if you guys have an idea what these two different, what's the difference? What's this valve? Why is this valve different? Why is the power head so funky compared to this one? Let's see what the chat says. Did I oversize the run for my office considering the 2-ton computer load? No, I did not design my new air conditioner in my house. It did not account for my computer load because I didn't want to oversize my system just for a computer that would run sometimes. We're slowly coming to a conclusion to that problem of having high heat in my office, and it has nothing to do with the air conditioning system. So we're going to fix that. No. Okay. So they are not the same. It is not a hot gas bypass. It kind of looks like it. This is a head pressure control valve. It's just the power head that's different. Okay. It's kind of adjustable, Super Tech, kind of adjustable. Okay. This is a dual pressure head. This right here can bypass at 70 or 180 PSI. But here's the trick. If you cut the tip on this one, okay, you clip the tip on it, then it changes the bypass pressure on this guy. Okay. This one right here only has one bypass pressure. This one happens to be a 210 PSI bypass pressure. So at 210 PSI, this thing stops bypassing. Anything below 210 PSI, this thing opens up and starts flooding the condenser. This one right here, when you cut the tip on it, you change the bypass pressure permanently. It's not something you can change after that. But if you ever see this funky head, it's a dual pressure head right here. And basically it has two different pressure bypass settings. One is with it fully intact. And then when you clip the tip, it changes it and it becomes another pressure setting. Okay. So, a lot of people see these things and they're so confusing for people, and it's just a head pressure control valve. It does kind of look like a hot gas bypass valve, but it's not necessarily. So, see what else we got going on in here. Yeah, it's kind of adjustable for sure. So, reading through the chat right now. No, it's, oh yeah, you said it's like an EPR holdback pressure. Let's see. Do I clean my field piece temperature clamps? If so, how often? I mean, I don't know. I probably don't do a good job of cleaning my temperature clamps now. So refrigeration systems in cold weather, make sure you're checking the charge. Make sure it has the proper flooded charge in them. Those can be kind of tricky. If you're running a fan cycling system, you know, those are a little bit easier to charge, but I don't really care for fan cycling where it's at. And I know that the supermarket guys are already dealing with this. We're starting to see it a little bit more in the higher end systems. In the smaller refrigeration systems, I think it'll catch up in that they're going to start to go to variable speed condenser fan motors where they can slow the motors down instead of doing a fan cycle where it turns off the motor and just violently messes with the system pressures. If you can just slow down the speed of a fan, you know, it's starting to become more prevalent these days. I know some of that stuff has existed for a while, but it hasn't really become mainstream because they weren't very reliable. So hopefully with the newer motors, but you know, they are ECM motors. So are they really more reliable? That's a questionable question. Oh, I had another good question. Actually, my buddy Adam asked me about this, but I had someone in the chat ask me too. The pipe clamps that I used on my home system, I used a Hydrosorb. Well, this is a special kind of a clamp that mounts in Unistrut. You know, and I get it. You refrigeration guys, you guys already know what these clamps are, right? And you already see these fittings, but a lot of people don't, and they don't understand them. So if you have a typical Hydrosorb clamp, right? It's just a piece of rubber that goes around the pipe. And then oftentimes if you have insulation coming up to it, it just, I don't know, you lose your insulating value at the point of the clamp, right? So this is called a Cusha-Therm clamp. Essentially, it only clamps around this piece that has 3/4 wall insulation. So this is a 5/8 inch inside diameter, and then it has 3/4 wall insulation. So what you actually do is you clamp it around the pipe, and then you bring your pipe insulation right up to the side, and you just glue your pipe insulation to this, and then you never lose your insulation when you go to the clamps. So again, it's just a Cusha-Therm clamp for Unistrut. Google that, it'll come up. Everybody can find those. They're really not difficult. If you're dealing with refrigeration, you're already seeing those a lot, but a lot of refrigeration people don't actually see them. Cush clamps are different than that. That's a Cush a therm clamp. So that's the one that the insulation comes up to. A Cush clamp can be a little bit different. There's a couple different styles, but I prefer that style right there. So I keep getting this question and I've answered it many times. I released a little short form video where I went up to a rooftop where the customer didn't take my quote and they used someone else and they had the wrong unit changed. And people, everybody keeps asking me in the chat, why in the heck do I continue to work for that customer? Why was I there again if they didn't accept my quote? Because I'm not going to fire a customer just because they use someone else. Now, if it consistently happens over and over and over again, and they're just undercutting me, then yeah, I would consider firing that customer. But I have no problem in competition. If someone can do the job cheaper than me and they can do just as good of a high quality job, then I clearly have something to learn from that person. Okay. So I have no problems if people use someone else. It's not the end of the world, right? In this situation, it benefited me because had they used my quote, yeah, it would have cost a couple extra bucks more, but they would have got the right unit changed. So, right. All right. Yeah, see, Super Tech saying that already seeing VFD on condensers for supermarket racks, very common. Yeah, exactly. And for the higher end stuff, you see that for sure. Crazy thing is when you listen to the price of some, and I've heard some of the horror stories about some of the older like EBM Pabst motors and stuff that you can't get right now. That's a nightmare. Or that they discontinued certain models. That's kind of crazy. That's scary to think. Customer spends a bunch of money and then, guaranteed leak point if rubber wears out. Josh, are you talking about like on a Hydrosorb clamp? Let's see. You meant to ask, how do I clean my field piece clamps? If not, how often? How do I clean them? I mean, I would just wipe them down is really all that I would do. I don't really have any other things. What courses would I suggest to make myself more valuable, or for Aaron saying to make himself more valuable to his company? I mean, anything. Take a business course, take a customer service course, just any kind of classes that can better you as a service technician. That's going to be your best bet. Start, one of the best pieces of advice for me, understand I'm probably not the same as every one of you. And I shouldn't say this is the best advice, but people will ask me often, how do I ask my boss for a raise? Or how do I do this? How do I do that? What I always do is say, reflect on yourself. What about you thinks that you deserve a raise? If I was to go ask my boss for a raise, right? If I was still working for someone, what I would do is I would look at myself and think, okay, what do I need to do? What goals have I met? What goals have I obtained? Right. And then I would go to my boss and I say, hey, you know what? I feel like, I've excelled. I feel like I've gotten to the point where I've really reached some milestones, but I want more responsibility and I want to grow with this company. So what can I do as a service technician to start making more money? That's how I would ask my boss for a raise. Okay. If I was working for someone, I would just simply say, what can I do to make more money? Now, of course, there's a difference between a raise because you're improving your job skills. And then there's also cost of living raises too that will happen often. Cost of living raises should kind of be automatic. But as far as you're bettering yourself, you're becoming a better service technician, you're becoming more valuable, I always personally would say, go to your boss and just say, hey, what kind of goals do you want me to set? Is there something you want me to do to be able to get to a point where I can start making more money? And just ask them. Okay. Reading through the chat right now. What am I missing? NATE certification. Aaron G. If NATE is good for the company that you work with, there's nothing wrong with NATE. I personally am not a huge fan of NATE certification just because as a service technician, you now have to pay every time it's time to renew your membership. When NATE first came out, you basically just had to continue your education and then you can get you would be update. But now it's more or less like a money-making thing. I don't know. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of that concept, but the cool thing, like I said earlier in the stream, that I appreciate about any kind of industry certification, whether it be NATE, RSCS, whatever you insert name of whatever certification, is most of all of them require you to continue your education. So any certification's better than no certification. But don't think that just because you have a certification, that makes you the best service technician, because that's absolutely not true. Okay. There's plenty of amazing service technicians that don't have one single certification. Okay. But any certification is better than no certification, in my opinion. Hopefully that helps you there. Can I show the open compressor behind me? I mean, I tell you what, just shoot me an email and I'll shoot you a link to the video where I open those up, because it's pretty in depth to pull those things apart. So, and they're kind of heavy and I don't want to get all dirty and greasy right now. I'm a prima donna now. I don't want to get my hands dirty. No, I work every day. So, all right, let's see. I've gone through my list right now. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. What am I missing? Definitely, if you guys haven't already and you don't already know about it, I do a YouTube show with my friends on Friday evening, 6:05 p.m. Pacific time, called the HVAC Overtime Show. It is a not safe for work. If you don't like bad words, you definitely don't ever even want to research the HVAC Overtime Show. Okay. Polar opposite of this channel. But it's a good time, good friends, good hangout on Friday nights. Watch the reruns, download the podcast. It's a great time. So, reading through the chat right now. Is 38 too low to get into HVACR? You're interested in commercial. Is 38 too low? It depends on the area you're in and what your skills are. I see what you're saying. You're saying age wise. No, 38 is not too old, too late. No. You can, there's plenty of work as long as you're a fast learner and you're an able-bodied person that can lift compressors and, lift a reasonable amount of weight, and you can function and move around. Yeah, 38 is perfect. I thought you were asking wages. But no, age, no, there's nothing wrong with 38, man. Plenty of time. Is my parking brake on right now? 100% nasty HVACR. My wife's parking brake is on in our garage. That's flat. My parking brake's on in my truck. My parking brake's on in my van. Everybody in my family puts their parking brake on every single time they park. I don't care if they're on a flat surface or on a hill. We always put our parking brakes on. Reading through here. Clear the sight glass on the coldest day of the year, Mike B is saying. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to find the proper flooded charge for a system, is to clear the sight glass on the coldest day of the year. But how practical is that? That's the question. What's the purpose? Let me ask the chat right now. What is the sole purpose of the head pressure control valve? I'm looking for a specific answer. The sole purpose of a head pressure control valve in a refrigeration system. Why is it there? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the expansion valve. Now, this is a thermostatic expansion valve, but it has to do with the expansion valve. That is the sole purpose of a head pressure control valve in a typical refrigeration system. Control head pressure, okay. Liquid refrigerant to the TXV. Those are all good guesses, but not quite the right answer. It was part of the stream of comments. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying there, Mike B. To keep the pressure up to create enough pressure drop across the TXV. That is 100% correct, Nasty. So think about a thermostatic expansion valve. Okay, a thermostatic expansion valve has a power head putting downward force on a spring that's opposing that power head. Okay, and it's set for a certain amount of volume of refrigerant to go through that valve. Okay, but refrigerant reacts to temperature. As it gets colder outside, the pressure in the system will typically go down. As it gets warmer outside, the pressure in the system will go up. This expansion valve is meant to operate in a very small operating envelope, and anything outside of that operating envelope, depending on the type of expansion valve, it can start to act really wonky and not work correctly. So as the head pressure drops, the pressure drop, the differential across this valve starts to go down, and then the valve starts to act kind of messed up and it doesn't work correctly. In really low ambient conditions, the head pressure control valve floods the condenser, creates a artificial warm outside ambient temperature by flooding the condenser, partially blocking off the condenser, increasing the head pressure while still putting refrigerant downstairs, liquid refrigerant, and it makes the expansion valve operate properly. So that's the point of a head pressure control valve, is to create or maintain a constant pressure differential across that expansion valve so it can operate properly. That's the real purpose of a head pressure control valve. All right. Yeah, lots of great answers there. All right. You work on any semi-hermetic compressors? Yeah, I have a few semi-hermetic compressors, but to be honest with you, most of the equipment that I'm working on these days is scrolls. I still have a few discus compressors out there. I still probably have maybe 15 to 20 small fractional horsepower semi-hermetics, maybe slightly bigger. But most of the compressors I deal with are the hermetic pot compressors and the scroll compressors is most of the stuff that I'm working with. When I first came up in the industry, there was a lot of semi-hermetics. We had a lot of Carlisle compressors, O6Ds and different things. We had them in ice machines. I used to work on Vote ice machines. We had them in a lot of the carrier equipment. The 10-ton stuff all had Carlisle compressors with unloaders, but we don't deal with a lot of that anymore because they kind of, got rid of a lot of that stuff to reduce the weight, increase efficiency. They went to scroll compressors. When sizing units, if you're between two sizes, is it better to go bigger or go smaller? Aaron, it really depends. Like, what kind of equipment are we talking about? And when you're talking about refrigeration equipment, if you look at a load calculation chart, a lot of times they're sizing that equipment based on a certain runtime and hours for the equipment. So you do have a little bit of margin of error there. And if you oversize equipment on a condenser or on an evaporator, you can lead to some problems. So you do have a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to like load calculations for air conditioning equipment and different stuff like that. What you're going to find is that a lot of load calculation software already has fudge factors built into it. So if you think, that's not big enough, I'm just going to go up in size for a residential air conditioner. Like, for instance, my house, we sized my load at a 2-ton load, and we were kind of aggressive because we were slightly over 2 tons of required cooling capacity, right? But basically, we know that there was a fudge factor built into the load calculation. So we sized right at the 2-ton because it's like, we know it could do it, and it does just fine. So reading through the chat. Do I ever swap valve plates? I have SuperTech. Again, it's not something that I do very often anymore, but I have in the past for sure. So reading through the chat. Sean says he misses commercial refrigeration. Sean used to work with me quite a few years back, but Sean moved out of state. But yeah, Sean definitely, he moved to the land of cold where he deals with, I believe you deal with a lot of oil stuff, don't you, Sean? And a lot of heating systems where he's at. So when sizing units, if I'm in between, I already answered that one, Aaron. Do I ever dip my toes into chillers? No, Michael, I've never gotten into chillers. So what meter do I use? Currently in my bag, I have 2 meters in my van. Actually, yeah, I think I have 2 meters. I have 3. I have 2 flukes and a field piece. And my go-to is just my field piece SC480. It's a super small clamp meter. It may not be like the most scientifically accurate thing, but it does perfect for what we do. And it has all the features that I need in it. And it's relatively inexpensive. I have higher end fluke meters too, but to be honest with you, I don't use those very often at all. So new racks are all going to scroll racks, says SuperTech. Yeah, that's pretty common. So, and they're going to like digital scrolls and different things too. So, all right, cool. Well, it is time that I wrap this up because it's dinner time. I really do appreciate you guys. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Stay tuned. We got more of the house series coming. Like I said, I'm working on editing a video right now where it's going to show me doing the air balancing process on my house system and showing some problems that I have. You guys will get to see the one problem that I found on my home system when I installed it. And then we've still got to add fresh air to the house. That'll be coming soon. We still got to do jumper ducts, return paths in the house and everything. So that's all coming soon. So stay tuned. Remember, for those that are watching, I will be at and I'm going to keep saying this to let everybody know, I'm going to be at the HVACR Training Symposium in Claremont, Florida, the end of January. And then I'm going to be at the AHR Expo in Chicago, beginning of February. So definitely make your plans if you guys are interested. Actually, I think the HVACR Training Symposium is completely sold out. So if you guys want to do online tickets, you'll definitely be able to get those. But if you're going to be there in person, definitely stop me and say hi. AHR, you'll be able to find me. Sporlan booth, Refrigeration Technologies booth, Heatcraft Refrigeration booth. I'll be in between all of those. Probably majority of my time will be at the Sporlan booth. I know there's a lot of time till then, but I'm just letting everybody know ahead of time. Kitchen exhaust fan shaking, bearing and screw fastener. Okay, what else needs to check? Dan, if you have a shaking kitchen exhaust fan, the first thing, it sounds like you're a restaurant owner, restaurant manager, something like that. If not, it's okay. It doesn't matter. I don't care who comments on these things. I try to help everybody. If you have a vibrating exhaust fan, first thing you need to do is have that exhaust fan cleaned professionally. Have a professional come out, could degrease that fan, get it into normal operation. Now, if it's really, really dirty and it's been really dirty for a long time, a dirty, greasy exhaust wheel will actually destroy itself because it'll balance itself with all that grease on there. So oftentimes, if it's really, really dirty, when you clean it, the vibration will get worse. And that's just simply because of lack of maintenance. If your bearings look good and you don't see any other issues with it and it's still vibrating after you clean it, then what I'm going to suggest for the most part is change the wheel, the shaft, both bearings, and the pulleys, and put a new belt on it, and you'll probably solve your problem. But unfortunately, these days, kitchen exhausts are so inexpensive that most of the time they're not worth all that work, and it's just easier just to change the whole exhaust fan. So Tiny Man, thank you very much for that super sticker. I really do appreciate it. Have I checked for a lower Edison bill? Dale Marr, my electric bill is insanely low. Like the energy consumption for my new system at my house is so low. It's just dumb. Okay, now I'm going to have added because I went with a heat pump. So I'm going to have, more electrical consumption when it's running in the wintertime. But honestly, that system is going to pay for itself in a year and a half, 2 years. Easy. Because from April to September, my electric bills are anywhere from $600 to $800 a month. That's how much California electricity is. It's just dumb, right? My new system just runs so low current, like it's insane. Yeah, it's crazy. So stay tuned. I'm going to cue up the outro music. I really do appreciate you, and we will catch you on the next one.